Welcome to another video. It's Thursday. That means it's Gear Talks. That means I'm back. That means Squirtle's in the corner right here. How you guys doing? Poll ended last time in a tie, so I got to make the tiebreaker and find what was picked first. Top 5 games, as you saw in the title. So, just because, maybe it's because I have to get to work in about 30 minutes, we're going to make this video quick. So that means we're going to have a shorter video, I guess, and this is going to be the top of my head, but I'm going to make it fancy and amazing and all that good stuff just for you. So here we go. Okay, so aside from that intro, I'm not actually going to be speeding this up so quickly that you're not going to tell what I'm saying, or I'm not going to actually be thinking everything through and I'm going to keep messing up. No, I'm actually going to take this one step at a time, and this is actually going to be a proper video. So let's start this off with an honorable mention mostly for the DLC Shadow of Rom. Now, in my personal opinion, it is the best DLC of all the Gears games by far in my mind. For Gears of War 3, they had the DLC Shadow of Rom, which took place during 10 AE, which is after Emergence Day. And what it pretty much was told the story of pretty much Zeta Squad and how the events they had when they came across Rom. And also in that DLC, you could play as Rom, which was amazing because it wasn't just running around shooting. It was how Rom would actually fight. Knife in hand, sending out the krill. He doesn't even have a gun. He's not carrying anything, just his knife. And it was really fun because not only could you play as Rom, but with Zeta you got a lot more backstory into things. And that's also the first time Jace, you meet him, and that's when he decides, like, okay, I'm going to join the COG. Spoilers towards the end of it. It was really nice because it brought back characters we knew, and also all the characters that were in the squad, for Zeta, they were all already dead. So one of the selling points was like, here are the characters and what they were doing while they were still alive. For instance, you've got Kim in there, you've got Ty, you've got Valera, you've got Barrick. All 4 of these characters are dead by the end of the series. And in fact, Valera actually dies in the story for Shadow of Rom. I want to say Rise of Rom constantly because of the comics. And it was only like 1 act and like 5 chapters, I believe. And it was really good. They could have stretched that out, made it into an entire game. I would have had no problem with it. In fact, that could have been the superior judgment, you could have said. And speaking of that, let's get on to the actual list with number 5. Yeah, so number 5 is Judgment because, look, I made a video talking about Judgment, how it's not that bad of a game, how it doesn't live up to the others, but it's still a decent game. But no, let's all be honest. I'll even be honest here. It's out of all the current games I'm going to be listing, like, it's not that high. It's number 5. It barely beats Rom Shadow, or Shadow of Rom, whichever you want to call it. I keep getting it mixed up. It barely beats it just because of the fact that it's a full game. Shadow of Rom was great, or Rom Shadow. I'm going to call it Shadow of Rom, just I keep messing it up. It was a great DLC. It was amazing. My favorite out of all of them. The issue is, though, it's only 1 act. And with Judgment, you still do get a lot of story stuff that happens. Much like Shadow of Rom, it does fit into the narrative somewhere. It does fit into the story. So it's not like it's just some random thing like, oh, this is what could have happened if they were alive, or this is what was that. No, story-wise, it works. Just like Judgment. There is a time it actually fits in, and things do sync up. Now, there are things that aren't right about it. For instance, the Mark II Lancers and everything. But that's something they openly said they were going to do. It's not like that's something they screwed up on. But enough about the screw-ups of Judgment. Let's talk about why it's actually, like, not the honorable mention and having the DLC take its place. It was a very visually appealing game. It looked very good. Visually, graphic-wise, it was extremely good. The story was pretty well, I thought. It was put together in a well-done way. Multiplayer, that's out the window. We're not even going to talk about that. Everything, technically even the DLC, because that was in 3, technically everything beats it in multiplayer. Nothing can really go below Judgment in that aspect. That's why it's pretty much down here. If its multiplayer was decent, I might put it above what's number 4, and that would tick a lot of people off. But with Judgment, I thought as an overall it was okay, but it can't compare to what came before it. So from there, let's talk about what's going to really tick some people off when I say Judgment could possibly beat 4. Let's talk about it, shall we? Number 4 would be Gears of War 1 and the Ultimate Edition. Now, before the world just comes down and smites me, because I know they will, for even bringing up the idea that Judgment could possibly overtake 1, hear me out. okay? I'm going to get into the story when I get to it, but when it comes to Gears of War 1, I didn't start off with that. Gears of War 1 was not the first Gears game I played. That was actually the second one I ever played. And compared to what I played before it, it didn't really hold water. It was still an amazing game. Both were amazing, the one I'm going to tell you about soon. It's just that with Gears of War 1, I didn't start off with that, so I didn't get the oomph that a lot of other players did starting off with that. I didn't get that. I got that with the games after it, but I never got that with the main Gears of War game. And it really, again, this is my personal list, it really doesn't hit me like a Gears fan when you're playing all these other ones and you already know the story and everything, and then you finally play one, and it's like, okay, I know this, the graphics aren't as great as what comes after it, the mechanics, they aren't as fine-tuned for the games after. So it didn't really hit me as hard as it normally would. Now, the Ultimate Edition was very good. Don't get me wrong, it is. But that still is the story of Gears of War 1. I'm not going to separate these two when essentially, and I say essentially lightly because there are some major differences, essentially they're the same game. So I put them together because I don't really want to separate them, or else I'd have two of the same game on a top 5 list, and I don't feel that's right. So the reason number 1 is number 4, it's a great game. It's just that I never started off with that and got the impact most players got. That's the only reason it's set at number 4. If I would have started off with it, I'm sure it would have been probably number 2 or 3 at least. But for right now, I have to put Gears of War 1 and Gears of War Ultimate Edition at number 4, just because when I first played, I never got that impact of the Gears of War franchise starting off. Number 3, this one, it's not really controversial. I think it explains itself. I have Gears of War 4 as number 3. Now, the reason I put number 4 as number 3 is because of the fact that it was a good game and it was done by the Coalition in a way that showed we can continue the franchise on in the direction that it was originally done, which they did. It felt very Gears of War when you played it. A lot of reviews that came out for it stated like, oh, this doesn't feel like anything's changed. It's a Gears of War game. Well, that was kind of the point. They weren't really aiming to break away from the franchise at the time. With Gears of War 5, they're somewhat aiming to do that. They're aiming to go in a different direction with Gears. In fact, it's just called Gears from here on out as a 5. But that's the thing. With 4, it was made to be a Gears game. That's the downright simple truth of it. That's why it was made. And when it comes down to gameplay and everything, it really wasn't that extravagantly different. I mean, you had some new elements, like you had, the elemental stuff going on, the new enemies, but that was about it. You had new weapons too, but I mean, every Gears game gets something somewhat new. So I understand why they did it, and I hold nothing against them and say, oh, they got lazy with it. No, it's just with 4, there wasn't a lot of change to really put everyone on like, oh my god, this is the best Gears ever made. It wasn't like that. Visually wise with this game, it was amazing. Multiplayer wise, it's amazing. It's just that you can't really make something that's already been done to prove a point and say that's the greatest thing ever done. That's why it's number 3. There are 2 other games, and you can probably guess what they are by now, that actually come out and beat the Gears of War 4, the new Coalition franchise they're going forward with. And let's go on to number 2 right now. So for these 2, it was really hard to decide. And the only reason that one of these 2 made number 1 instead of number 2 was because of the fact that there's an actual personal story that goes with it. So number 2, barely losing out, is Gears of War 3. Now, Gears of War 3, if it wasn't for the fact that there are certain reasons for number 1, I would say this is my favorite of them all. Narrative-wise, writing-wise, it is the best out of all of them, no question. Karen Traviss did amazing on this. She did the books. It was an amazing, amazing story, but a lot of people weren't happy with it because if you didn't read the books, you kind of lost out on info, like why Hoffman was at Anvil Gate, the references Baird makes to fighting off other Leviathans, why they're on a ship, what's going on, where are the other characters, who's Bernie. You wouldn't know any of that unless you read the books and comics, and that really did make people angry. It still makes people angry to this day. That's why they're angry about the books coming out for 5, but I digress. It was by far my favorite because it wasn't just like a major shoot 'em up, we're going to take down the Queen. Going from like the ship in general to Anvil Gate to the island, it felt like it felt like an adventure. It was a very short adventure, don't get me wrong, but it was an adventure. There was a travel going through this entire thing. It truly felt like we were going on a journey to end this. That's why I love 3. It was the end, but it was an end that was given to us in such a way that built us up to the ending. If you take your time and play this game and you don't rush it, it truly feels like you're going across the entire world of Sarah somewhat, with obviously within the Coalition territories, and it just, you don't get that feeling with the other ones, really. You do journey around, but there's never, we're on this journey to go do something. You never got that except with 3. And that was my personal favorite part of it. Also, Horde mode and multiplayer were amazing, too. I do think 4 wins in multiplayer, but Horde-wise, I kind of want to give it to 3. But that's my personal feeling toward 3. I would say it's my favorite if it wasn't for the reasons for number 1. Now, number 1, as you probably guessed by whittling everything down, it's Gears of War 2. And the reason Gears of War 2 is like this is because before I get into the reason, I'm going to tell you a story. I first started with Gears of War 2. That was my first Gears game. And the great thing about Gears 2 is you jump into it, aside from mentioning ROM at one point, there's really nothing else you need to know going into it. And I'm a hesitant gamer when it comes to games that are in a series. I haven't started Metal Gear because I don't know where to start. I'm not just going to jump in randomly, even though I hear the games are amazing. If I start a game franchise, unless it's a reboot, I'm going to start from the very beginning with something. And it was the case with that with Gears of War 2. I had a buddy that was in high school with, still friends with him. I wish I talked to him more often than I do right now, though, because I barely talk to him now and then. But Chase Couch is his name. Great guy. And he introduced me to it. He said, hey, this is a great game. Let's play it. It's multiplayer. It's awesome. The multiplayer online is great. It's a 2-player campaign. And I was hesitant. But then again, this is my best buddy, and I wanted to play games with him. Who didn't want to do that in high school? So I was like, you know what? Okay, let's do this. And I played as Marcus, and he wanted Dom because he's like, this is your first time ever playing it. You can be the main character, Marcus, and you can start this off. The moment I picked it up and started that tutorial, I could already tell there was something, I could already tell there was something special about the situation I was in, playing this game with my best friend, going through it, and just completing campaign. We completed Horde mode just as a 2-man team even, and I have some of my best memories of gaming from Gears of War 2. I went through that entire game with him, and we completed everything. We got all the characters, and that's what truly started me off with Gears of War in general. It was because of my friend wanting to play a game with me, 2-player, and just saying, just trust me. Even though it's not the first in the series or anything, you're going to enjoy this. You don't need to worry. It's going to be good. And it was an experience for the first time because I jumped on and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what Gears of War even was. And it was amazing. And then I went through and got all the games. I got 1 after that, played it. Then I got 3. Then I got all the other games that came after. Then I finally got my hands on the books, the comics, went through those. And that really did lead me up to having my love of Gears. It's one of my favorite it's probably my favorite franchise. The only thing that beats it are my favorite game list, which definitely would be like Dragon Age Origins and all that. It's probably my favorite game of all time. But franchise-wise, Gears of War is probably my favorite. And it's something, you see it a lot and you hear it in stories, but it's something you have to experience. And I was lucky enough to experience that feeling of like knowing this is the beginning of something I'll love. So 2 will always be number 1 for that reason, but I should probably go into the reasons why it's actually like a good game as a game and not just my personal feelings towards it. So the mechanics for Gears of War 2 definitely surpassed 1 by a long shot, and that kind of led the foundation up to what we currently know for the mechanics. The mechanics in 2 were very well done, and the introduction of Horde mode was extremely good because Horde mode were just waves and waves of enemies. And I think if I remember hearing right, I think that was the first time like a genuine like Horde style mode was introduced into gaming was through Horde mode in Gears of War. Kind of like how hiding behind cover, that option in gaming was perfected by Gears of War. There could have been other modes like Horde and other game franchises, but I think, again, Gears of War perfected it to what we know now, how the format is done. The story was also extremely well done because it opened up a lot of info. And sorry, my head's itching just because, again, this hat causes an itchy scalp. My bad if you don't want to know that. Anyway, when it came to the story itself, it really did a good job of fleshing things out, setting us up for what was to come, especially when it came to 3 and future games too. In 2, even, we got the New Hope facility, and that's a major point in 5 that's coming up. We also got our first look at not just the wretches in 1, but the actual locust lambency problem. We met the Queen in the second one. We ended up learning about... We learned about a ton of things in 2, actually. We fought our way through the Riftworm. We met another Carmine. That was all just in 2. We experienced and went through all that. I mean, game-wise, for anyone who never read the books and just went by the games, we met Ty for the first time, and that was amazing until he kind of left. But it was an experience, and again, with my personal story, the first time you go through that, it really is an experience. It's something you never forget. So even though I love the writing of 3, and I think the writing was better in 3, it's the fact that 2 had so many things introduced to us. 3 was the closing of the entire trilogy. 3 was the end of it all. 3 was just we finish it all up. 2 was opening up this mystery. Number 1 was all about we got to survive. Number 2 is we got to figure out how we're going to win this. We need to dig into the enemy. And that was by far my favorite part of the story because we learn so much. We get so much more out of the characters. Baird and Cole are back. It's not like they're just temporary side characters we see in 1. No, we know we're Delta. They're with us. Sigma and Delta bros for life. And it's something you really just didn't get with the other ones. 4, you kind of got that. But again, 4 wanted to base itself more on 1. And that's fine and all. It's just... In my mind, Gears of War 2, out of all of them, I would say, is the perfect Gears of War game. I think 5, again, I have my feelings towards it, yay or nay, but if they do things correctly, I think 5 could beat 2. But that's something we have to wait and see. So, yeah, Gears of War 2 takes number 1. I can't put anything above it. So that'll do it for my top 5 list. Again, I know this one's less than 20 minutes. Oh my god. But, again, I got work coming up, and I had to hurry this one up a bit. I want to thank you guys for voting into this one. This one's been on the poll for a while. I've wanted to do this one ever since I did my top 5 or 10 characters I like and dislike. I figured I'd do the games too. And I'm happy to get this one out of the way and I can open up the poll a bit. Again, time's running out because probably a month and a half before E3 actually happens, I'm going to be cranking out a ton of Gears 5 videos, gear tactics, talking about pop. I want to do all of that so that we can get ready for it. And then after E3, it's probably going to be another month of me doing other videos involving the Gears of War E3 news we get until it'll finally start calming down. And then once we get our large chunk of news and we're satisfied, we can make it to Gears Tactics and Gears 5 at the end of the year. So thank you again for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. I have a Gear Talk video out every Thursday like you're watching right now, unless it's already come out and you're watching this a different day. If not, every Thursday you can watch the new one. You guys have a great day. Love you all. See you guys next Thursday.